The story begins on October 13, 1972. A rugby team was flying to Chile to play their final match. Spirits were high. Many of the players had never left their country before, and several family members had joined them for the trip. The plane took off smoothly and headed toward Chile, crossing the towering Andes Mountains. For the first few minutes, everything was normal. Then a faint vibration ran through the cabin. One passenger casually mentioned that turbulence was common when flying over mountains. But this time the shaking grew violent. Luggage tumbled from overhead bins, passengers clutched their seats, and panic spread as the pilots fought to steady the aircraft. They never got the chance. The plane smashed into the side of a mountain and split into two. The rear section was torn away and vanished into the snow. The front section slammed into a massive ice slope. Seats stacked on top of each other like fallen dominoes, crushing several passengers instantly. Those who survived found themselves surrounded by twisted metal, blood, and bodies. Of the 45 people on board, 18 died in the first moments. Darkness fell quickly. The flight had taken off in the evening, and in the Andes, night brought brutal cold. The survivors huddled together for warmth, using luggage and even the bodies of the dead to plug holes in the fuselage and block the freezing wind. Fear hung over everyone. None of them had imagined their trip ending like this. By morning, sunlight gave them a small sense of relief. But stepping outside, they saw nothing but an endless desert of snow. No houses, no animals, not even a single tree. Just white, silent emptiness. They pulled plane seats outside to clear space inside the fuselage where they could sleep. Injured passengers were placed in the sunlight to stay warm, and the group melted snow to drink water. They also gathered everyone's belongings, keeping anything that might help them survive. The bodies of those who had died were moved away from the wreck and covered with snow, preserved in case help arrived later. After eating the tiny amount of food they had, the group rested, knowing they had to ration every crumb until rescue came. That night, they patched the holes in the plane with clothing and luggage and endured another freezing ordeal. The next morning, Nando, who had been unconscious since the crash, finally woke up. He was so weak he could barely stand, but he still searched for his sister and hugged her. When he asked about his mother, he learned she hadn't survived. The news shattered him. Meanwhile, survivors melted more snow and carved a giant X on the ground, hoping a passing aircraft would spot them. When a plane appeared overhead, everyone waved pieces of broken glass to reflect sunlight. But the aircraft flew on without noticing them. Still, many believed rescue was coming. But another night passed. No one arrived. The group huddled together, trying to figure out how to survive in this vast, snow-covered wasteland. Someone remembered that the rear section of the plane contained batteries. If they could reach them, they might power a radio and contact the outside world. The idea was welcomed by everyone, and 4 men volunteered for the mission. They fashioned makeshift goggles out of leather and glass and set out toward the wreckage. But after traveling some distance, they turned back and realized the plane was nowhere in sight. In the endless sea of snow, it was impossible for anyone to see it from above. Despite this, they pushed on, only to be forced back when a snow slide made climbing too dangerous. Days passed, and a week later their food was gone. All around them was nothing but ice and snow, no trees, no animals, nothing to hunt or forage. Starvation began to take hold, and survivors tried eating snow-frozen moss and other inedible scraps. It was nearly impossible to sustain themselves. Finally, Nando made a harrowing decision. If survival demanded it, he would eat the flesh of those who had died in the crash. This sparked a heated debate. Some saw it as a moral sin, others as the only way to stay alive. Hunger worsened, and eventually some even gnawed on their shoe leather, but it didn't ease the pain. Tragically, Nando's sister succumbed to starvation, intensifying the group's despair. Coco, one of the players, wrote a letter to his family, believing he would not survive. By the 9th day, the survivors were barely conscious. Their minds struggled to function, and hope of rescue felt non-existent. After agonizing deliberation, 4 men became the first to eat the flesh of their deceased friends. The others held out for a while but eventually relented. From then on, corpses were taken to the edge of the wreck before being used, sparing those still unwilling to participate from witnessing it. Amid this horror, they discovered a suitcase buried under snow containing a radio. Working together, they improvised a temporary antenna and got it running. The radio revealed that authorities had sent 66 planes in search of them. But as time passed with no sign of rescue, they were officially declared dead. The news crushed the survivors and many wept, feeling utterly abandoned. With hope extinguished, even the remaining holdouts ate human flesh. The group now understood that rescue might never come. Determined, 3 of the men decided to return to the wreckage to retrieve the batteries and get the radio working properly. After hours of climbing and searching through the icy terrain, they found fragments of the plane, but no batteries. Exhausted and battered by the freezing wind, they found shelter behind a rock for the night. When morning came, they awoke buried in snow, their condition so dire that it is almost impossible to describe. By now, the survivors were utterly exhausted. One man's eyes had even frozen shut from the cold, and the others could barely stand. They had no strength left to move forward, so they sat on a plain sheet and returned to the group. When everyone saw them coming back empty-handed, despair settled over the group. The last person who had refused to eat human flesh finally gave in. Days dragged on. The survivors managed to stay alive for 17 grueling days, but the past 5 had brought a severe storm. Winds were so fierce that no plane could have approached. They huddled inside the fuselage, talking quietly, when suddenly a massive blizzard struck. Snow filled even the interior of the plane, yet some brave survivors kept their faces exposed, digging through the snow to help others breathe. Most survived, but one woman was crushed beneath the weight and suffocated. Some of the living perished under the brutal pressure. Desperate for air, the survivors dug a small hole inside the fuselage, praying no more snow would fall. After hours of effort, they finally pulled themselves together and moved 8 corpses into a corner. By the 18th day, they had endured 2 straight days buried under snow. Starvation had left them weak and delirious. The only way to survive was to eat the flesh of the dead. But this was nearly impossible to decide. They were eating their friends, teammates, and loved ones. Numa, a young man in the group, became furious and started smashing a plane window in anger. A shard of glass pierced his foot, but he didn't stop. After breaking the window, he began digging through the snow, working non-stop for 2 days until he finally created a small opening. When he emerged, it felt like everyone was reborn. They celebrated, clearing snow to free the plane entirely. Surprisingly, Numa noticed his foot injury no longer hurt. The freezing snow had dried and numbed the wound, though he paid it little attention and continued helping. By now the sun had risen, warming the scene. The plane was finally freed from the ice, and the group planned to return to the rear section to search for supplies. Fear of the freezing nights held them back, so they waited a few more days until the weather improved. 34 days had passed. Conditions were far better, but then tragedy struck. Coco developed fluid in his lungs and was near death. Despite desperate efforts, he didn't survive. They buried him and kept his heartfelt letter safe. 2 days later, on the 66th day, for survivors, Robito, Thin, Numa, and Nando decided to climb the snowy mountains again to search for the plane. During the climb, Numa's infected foot forced him to collapse. The others urged him to return with them, but he insisted he would descend alone and told them to continue. He made it back to the plane but was too weak to move, collapsing upon arrival. When he finally regained consciousness, he saw his friends clearing snow from the fuselage. He wanted to help but was too exhausted to even lift himself. The next day, the 3 climbers returned with good news. They had found the rear section of the plane. Along with batteries, they discovered clothes, rum bottles, and packs of cigarettes. They inserted the batteries into the radio and tried to contact the outside world, but no response came. Their last hope was gone. Meanwhile, Numa's condition worsened as the infection spread throughout his body. With all the remaining food gone, the group was forced to eat human flesh again. Numa, realizing his time had come, refused to eat, leaving food for the others. Some survivors returned to the rear section in search of supplies and discovered a waterproof cloth, which they fashioned into a sleeping bag. Through the radio, they learned that after 58 days, the government was sending a final rescue mission. A small spark of hope ignited among the group. Some argued they should wait at the plane, others feared staying would make them invisible from above. That night, Numa's condition deteriorated further. He told the others that if he died, they should eat his body to survive. Hours later, Numa passed away, leaving a small note expressing that he was glad to die among his friends. Reading it gave the survivors renewed determination. 3 men, Robert, Tintin, and Nando, decided to climb the mountains again to seek help, this time with the new sleeping bag and extra food. They pressed on day and night. Upon reaching the mountain peak, they were shocked to see more snow-covered peaks stretching endlessly ahead. Their supplies were running low, so Tintin gave his share of food to Robert and Nando and returned, letting the others continue. The journey was grueling, but Robert and Nando refused to give up. After 10 days of continuous trekking, they reached an area with less snow and discovered a clear river. As they drank, they noticed a man riding a horse on the opposite bank. Overjoyed, they shouted for help. The man couldn't hear them, so they wrote their entire story on a piece of paper and tossed it to him. He delivered it to government officials, who immediately launched a rescue mission. The man took Robert and Nando to his home, fed them, and soon the news spread through the city. Survivors trapped in the mountains heard it and danced with relief. Rescue teams arrived quickly, and after 72 days, the remaining survivors were finally saved. They were taken to a hospital and welcomed as heroes. They bathed, rested, and shared stories of endurance, but that night they all slept together, still haunted by the trauma they had endured. In the end, it was revealed that 45 people had been on the plane, but only 16 survived. And that concludes the harrowing tale.